Welcome back to the Present Fathers Podcast. Our guest in this episode is G Vidal. His full name is Guillermo Vidal, but he goes by G. G is one of my fellow Apogee brothers. He's actually further along in the program. He just completed his first year in Apogee. If you're curious what that is, I'll put a link in the description for this so you can check that out for yourselves. But I've known G now for a little bit going through that program, so we've had some good interactions together. And I was a recent guest on his podcast and had to have him on ours. He's got a great story of kind of being stuck in a prolonged state of childhood, kind of a teenage boy stuck in a man's body trying to be a family man. And I think that's something a lot of guys struggle with today because there's so many distractions in our lives. So G shares in his story how he overcame those things, overcame some marital troubles, and has really blossomed into a man that leads his family and guides them. And so I think there's a lot to take from his story, a lot of great advice, and I hope that it benefits you. If you've been enjoying the podcast and you want to support us, please do us a huge favor and go to YouTube and subscribe and like the video. If you're on one of the podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, etc., please leave us a review. It really helps us out. And I think on some of them, there's actually an option to ask a question. If you have questions for us, drop them on the episode. We'd love to respond and maybe incorporate that in future episodes. On top of that, we also have launched our store now to get shirts, hats, all that kind of stuff. So check it out. The link is in the description. And it's a great way for you to support us long-term to purchase some merchandise and get some sweet gear in the process. So again, we love you all. We thank you for all of the support. Share this with dads that you believe will benefit from it. And without further ado, let's climb into the episode and hear from G Vidal. Welcome to the Present Fathers Podcast. This is the show that focuses on climbing the mountain of fatherhood together. We believe that dads matter. That's why this show is for you. So gear up, dads. Get ready. It's time to start climbing. This is the Present Fathers Podcast, and we are excited to welcome Guillermo Vidal, a.k.a. G, to the podcast, brother. How are you, man?
I'm doing well, George. How's everyone doing?
Good, dude. It is, so we met last week at the Apogee Gala. So G is a fellow... Well, you're actually the inaugural class for Apogee, and I'm class 4, so I'm a little bit behind you in the program. But so you're an Apogee brother, you are a father of 3 children, husband, and you founded and run Alpha Dad Consulting. Did I miss anything?
No, I think you got it, man.
Got it. All right, we did it. I did my got my spiel. Good to go. All right. So with that out of the way, G, Let's just start a little bit with tell us about yourself from your point of view, about your family, about Alpha Dad Consulting, and we kind of go from there.
Yeah, man. So, started this YouTube channel a few years back called Alpha Dad Consulting. I went through a lot of different things that we'll get into in terms of in my marriage and with my own dad, right, growing up. And so I developed this real huge passion with helping fathers, right? Kind of like you guys are doing with this podcast. And so I got the idea in me. I was like, man, I want to start some sort of a business. I want to start some sort of a channel, put out content to help dads with whatever I can help them with, whatever the things that I've gone through. So what I did is, I started coming up with ideas, right? The business idea thing. And during that time, man, I was working at Apple. So I had a lot of creative people around me. I was learning a lot of video editing, music production, all that stuff. So I was using all those talents and leveraging those tools to try to build this YouTube channel and this thing out. So starting off, man, I was, I got into the blog thing, right? That was the thing during that time that was becoming big. I was like, hey, you should start a blog and start writing. And I thought to myself that I was a better writer than I was public speaker or getting on a camera. So I said, all right, let's just start writing content and putting up stuff, right? And my first business name, I'll tell you guys what it was. It was called Loco, like crazy in Spanish, Loco, Hispanic Dad. Okay. This was the first name of the business. And I was so proud of it, bro. I went in, I told my brother who lives with us, my younger brother, and then I told my wife, and they were like, oh yeah, that sounds good. Your family's always like, yeah, that sounds great.
Sure.
And I remember being at an Apple store, and after I had set up the blog, the website, everything, I was all proud of myself because I got onto WordPress. I did everything right. This lady comes in. She's like, "Hey, I'm thinking about starting a website. Do you have any help on that?" I was like, "Girl, you came to the right guy. Let me show you." So we go over to one of the Macs, right, in the Apple store, and I started showing her like, "Hey, you got to use WordPress. You got to do this and that." And watch, if you check out my website, I'll show you what I did. And I go to it, I type it in, and she looks at the name. She's like, "Is it called Loco Hispanic Dad?" She starts cracking up in my face. And I'm like, "Yeah, that's what I called it." She's like, "Oh, you're serious? Like you're actually, oh, okay. Yeah, sorry." She goes, and I'm like, "Oh, dude."
Just totally deflated.
Yeah, so like such a dagger to my ego, man. It just, so that's where that business idea died right there. When I got that feedback, and that's when I was like, all right, I need to come up with something else, right? I come up with this alpha dad concept because I like the idea of the alpha, right? And I'm not, I mean, you've met me. I'm like 5'7" on a good day, bro. You know, so maybe if I'm wearing the right shoes, I'm not like this big, huge, like hyper masculine dude. Like I'm not that guy, right? But I've always looked at the term alpha as just being a leader, somebody that's at the forefront of anything, and that it has to do a lot more with the mindset of an individual than it does with, you know, you just being like this huge yoked dude, right? So I like that concept. And then dad, of course, just being kind of an eternal role that once you become a dad, like you're a dad forever, you know, that's it. So I like that concept, but I didn't have that last word, right? So I remember I had all these different words, and one of them was hustle, alpha dad hustle, right? And I remember telling one of my friends who he's the type of guy who I grew up with, and he keeps it real with you, like straight 100, and just tells you, "Dude, this sucks," or, "Oh, this is actually pretty good," you know?
Yeah.
So I tell him the name, and he's like, "What are you, a pimp? Like, are you trying to like what are you hustling, bro? Like, what is this? Like this? No, man, change the name. Like, do something a little bit more professional, something like that." And I started thinking about consulting, right? Because I'm like, you look at businesses
Yeah.
and what do they do when they're struggling in an area of their business? They hire a consultant, right? Like a sales consultant or marketing, whatever it is. They come in, they assess what's going on, find the constraint, and then give them a blueprint on how to fix it. So I'm like, man, like it'd be cool if we had like a family consultant, right? Like a family CEO, because that's kind of what we are as the leaders of the home, right? Like the family
That's right.
CEO consultant that can come in and kind of do those kinds of things, like assess what's going on, find the constraint, and help him lead better, right? And fix the issues or repair the issues that are going on. So that's the concept that I had. So I'm like, I like this, I like this was just going. So that's where it grew the Alpha Dad Consulting, and then got the domain name, right? And started the YouTube channel and started just posting contents like spaghetti on the wall, bro. Just like whatever I could think of, this would be
Yep.
cool, let me just throw it out there. So I
Yeah.
was trying to help dads with like finances and like the business stuff that I was learning, and like anything I would read, a book I would read, I'd just share it. And what I came to learn about the YouTube game is that it's not like that. Like
No.
one of the things that I like about YouTube is that it's it gets confused for a social media outlet sometimes, like Instagram or Facebook, but it's not. It's a search engine, right? And it's
Yep.
the second most powerful search engine on earth, next to Google, and Google owns it.
Right.
So and I think to myself, like when I go on YouTube, I'm searching for something educational, something like, hey, how to do this, right?
Yep.
And so learning that game was kind of nice because it gave me the ability to kind of figure out, all right, well, let me get better at copywriting. Let me get better at writing titles, inciting curiosity, getting better at creating thumbnails and playing the YouTube game. So that's kind of what I started doing. And it wasn't until earlier this last year, or sorry, no, actually, it was actually last year. Late last year is when I started doing a simulcast where I was doing kind of like what you guys are doing, the podcast and the YouTube. But I started as a YouTube channel and then turned it into a podcast. And
Yeah.
now I'm about 40 episodes into the podcast, but I've been doing the YouTube for a little longer now, it's been cool, man. It's been a good ride. And this year with Apogee and what we've been doing here since I'm completing the year being in this program. Now I'm getting into the actual consulting, actual coaching aspect of it, of building out a brotherhood of men that I want to launch here in January, and also just starting working with guys like one-on-one coaching and all that. And it's going to be still the content, still the podcast and everything, but it's going to be more of a business side of things that it's getting launched, which I'm really really, really excited for. So it's gonna
Yeah,
be
it's
cool.
exciting, man.
Yeah.
All right, well let's go into a little bit of kind of your story and why you have such a big passion for helping dads and men, and kind of what qualifies you to do that through your experience and the growth that you experience, right? So, uh, I don't know if it makes sense to maybe start with like how what was your childhood like, and did that did you have any issues there that really like impacted how you grew up and how you showed up when you became a husband?
Yeah, man. Yeah, so growing up, I grew up in LA, so Southern California. That was kind of the roots. So I grew up around like all the gang life and everything around me. And um, growing up, I was pretty shy, man, pretty introverted. Kind of kept to myself. I was always kind of the smaller kid in the group of friends. So I was always looking for kind of the bigger kid to be friends with, right? So that I could have that
I can relate.
protection. Or yeah, so I was that kid, man. I was always trying to befriend whoever like the biggest dude on the block was. Let me become this guy's friend, because then I don't have to worry about getting bullied or anything like that. I'll be with this dude, right? And that was it, man. So I was very much kind of a people pleaser. I was looking for validation from everybody that I met, teachers, right, kids, and other older kids and stuff like that. I always sought that out. And part of that was just because my relationship with my own dad, was kind of broken. When you're 5, 6 years old, 7 years old, like your dad's your hero, right? It doesn't matter what he does, what he doesn't do. You see him as whatever perception you have, but as you get older and going into adolescence, that's when I started seeing him for what he was. And one of the things that he was big on is, I mean, he was a gambler, right? He loved to gamble, not a whole lot, but he did do it. And he was a ladies man. Like, that was his big downfall, is that he wanted to be with as many women as possible, and he cheated on my mom for a large part of their marriage. They're still married to this day, but and I can kind of get into how that is. But he had an accident that kind of made him stop his whole infidelity, everything he was doing. So now he can't work, he can't do all these things, and that's kind of what he ended up as. But um, going back to the childhood, that was my adolescence, man. I had a broken connection with him because I found out about all the things that he was doing, and it made it hard for me to want to dive in and want to seek out a relationship with him when it wasn't being reciprocated. Now, mind you, I don't hold anything against him now, because I understand he was following the limited knowledge that he had and how he grew up. So for him, I mean, he always put food on the table. He always provided. He always did that very well. Like, he worked hard. He was a hard worker. I don't blame him or take that away from him. It's just the title of your podcast, right? The present father. Like, he wasn't a present father, and that's kind of what I grew up with, I should say. So what that did to me in my teenage years, man, and I started going to church with my cousin, and his family, my uncle and my aunt and all them. They were all very religious. They were going to church every Sunday, and like they were at church like the entire weekend, right, Friday through Sunday and all that. So he would always tell me growing up. I was really close to him, and he's like, "Hey, dude, come with me to church. Come with me to church. Come, just come spend the weekend over with us." And then I finally said, "Yeah, like I'll do it. I just want to be away from the house. I'll go." And lo and behold, man, I started going to church. And at first, being 13, it was the girls. I was going to a new church. I was the new guy coming to church. So I was finally like the cool guy, right? Because nobody knew me. Nobody knew me from school. Nobody knew my background. I was kind of this mystery. So I used that to my advantage to kind of alter ego, right? Play this different character that was more attracting to the people. And I was just different in a different environment. Um, and it wasn't until about a year doing that, God working in me as well, that I started getting into hip hop. I got invited to a show, to this underground hip hop. It was a Christian underground hip hop concert. Take that
Okay.
as a mouthful. And I got
It almost
invited.
seems like a contradictory thing.
Right, I know, right? Yeah, dude. I think back now, and it does seem that way. But yeah, it was like that was a big thing back in the days, at least in the early 2000s, where like there was the mainstream hip hop,
Right.
right? Like the 50 Cent and the Eminem and all that, and there was this underground kind of style that was like Jurassic 5 and the Roots and like all these other artists, right? And Christian world kind of had the same thing. Like you had like the Lecrae, right? Like the big guys and all that. And then you had like the underground hip hop artists, which were like guys named Tunnel Rats. I'm probably dating myself here, but these were some of the bands that were there. And these were the bands that I got introduced to hip hop through. So we go to this concert in LA, man, and it's like a small room with these two big old speakers. Everybody's looking in there like sardines, and we're all just like, like 8 Mile style, right? Like just raising hands and going up and down. And there was all the bands that I grew up listening, or the groups that I grew up listening to, were performing that day, man. And they had like a rap battle at the end of it. Like it was wild. Like it was so cool. And it just opened up my eyes to like the possibility of this creative art of hip hop. And I was like, man, this is dope. So I went back home, and I had this this like reggae CD that somebody had burned for me, right? If you guys remember burned CDs. So somebody mixed that in LimeWire or Kazaa.
Yeah, I was gonna say they downloaded it from LimeWire.
Yeah, they downloaded it from
and then
LimeWire or Morpheus or
Napster.
or Napster. Yeah. So they downloaded that, made that CD for me. And on that CD, there was a 2-minute instrumental track, right? So from there, I just put it in my CD player, right? And then I had it on loop, and it was just going back and forth, man, on those 2 minutes. And I just kept listening to the beat over and over and over, and I kept writing. And that's where I wrote my first rap. And I remember my cousin came over, and he came in with his girlfriend. They came to pick me up, take me to church. We were gonna go to church, and I told him, I was like, "Hey, dude, can you come with me to the room real quick? Just leave your girl out here. I just want to show you something that I did." So I take him into the room, and then I perform it. This is my first time rapping in front of anybody. I perform it, and he's like, "Dude, did you just write that?" I was like, "Yeah, man. Like this is." I was listening to this. I wrote it, and he goes and gets his girlfriend, brings her in, and he's like, "Do it again, just in front of her." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, thanks, man." Like, and so I do it again, and they're both like, "Dude, this is pretty good, man." Like for the first time. So, and that just kind of opened up the world, man, of starting doing hip hop, and got connected with other guys from different churches, and we started this group called Methodical Elements, and we were able to do that for close to 10 years. We were just kind of performing all over LA, and nice. And it was a good time, man. But during that time, I meet this man because with the issues with my dad. I was always seeking out father figures, right? Like older men that I saw as wise and that would provide me with any type of counsel. I would always listen to them. I'd be that weird kid. Like I was the youngest guy in the group, but I'd be over there with like the older folk, just kind of listening, trying to get wisdom, right? Get a step ahead. And there was a man, his name is Dirk. I call him Pops endearingly because he earned that role in my life. And he saw me going through those growth in church. He was a white dude, man. He in going to this Hispanic church, and he spoke Spanish because he grew up speaking Spanish and all that. So he was always kind of this anomaly, right, at church. Like, all these Hispanic guys, and then you see this white dude is like taller than everybody.
The token white guy.
Yeah, the token white guy. He's the tallest guy. He's speaking Spanish to you, like no problem, right? And he just took an interest, man, and just gave me the time of day to give me counseling. And I remember one specific instance for me that really made the difference in terms of it was when I started preaching. So we were getting ready to do the youth service, and I was preaching for the first time. I was like, man, I want to do a preaching youth and pump up the youth, and I had no idea how to prepare a sermon or anything, or even read scripture and try to get details out of it or a lesson out of it. So Pops, he's like, hey man, I'll help you. All right, cool. So we went into one of the rooms in the church, and I'm sitting there, man, and this is the week of, okay, I haven't prepped anything. And he's trying to tell me, like, hey, well, this is what you want to do. You want to look at the context of the verse, and teaching me all of the stuff. And I'm just kind of zoned out because I'm feeling down on myself that I haven't prepared. And I'm like beating myself. I'm like depressed teenager stage, right? And I'm slouched, bro. I'm like sitting down, and he looks at me and he's like, hey, get up, stand up, look at me in the eyes when you're talking to me, and listen to what I'm telling you, because I'm giving you the answers of what you need to do when you get up there. If you're not going to get the help, or if you're not going to, take the help that I'm giving you, then what am I even doing here? This is the first time another grown man had checked me, and I'm just like, really, like, okay, like, dude, yeah, okay, I'm listening, sir. you know,
Yeah, yes, sir.
yes, sir. Yeah, and because it wasn't like this aggression. It wasn't like he was trying to be the drill
Yeah, it was like
sergeant. He just
authority. It wasn't.
exactly, but it
Yeah,
was it was just another
Stoicism.
man like coming in and checking a younger man that needs that because I was not in the zone, and then that snapped me out of it. Sorry, somebody was gonna say something.
Oh, I
Did I
just said
interrupt? Yeah,
stoicism. That's a perfect
yeah,
example of it.
yeah, yeah, man. Stoicism. That's exactly it. And he just had that, and he just always operates with that demeanor, man. Like he just has that presence, and that's when he won me over. Right when he checked me that way, he won me over, and he's like, "All right, this guy, I need to listen to this guy, like not because I have to, I want to listen to this man." And yeah, man, and I just grew to be like his son, got adopted as his son, and even though I didn't have my present father in the home, I had him, and I would go to him for advice and seek counsel growing up with him. And so a lot of my childhood, a lot of besides the hip hop and everything, one of the big vices that I had growing up was video games, man. And you guys are talking about we were talking about World of Warcraft earlier. Right? I never got into World of Warcraft, but I was definitely a Call of Duty guy and like
yeah,
PlayStation and all that, right? So since I lived in those rough neighborhoods, it was either my options was either, hey, go outside and get in trouble, right?
mm,
Or stay inside and play some video games and just zone
right,
out, every weekend, right? Because if I was out at night at 10 o'clock at night, like I wasn't doing anything good, you know.
right.
So I chose the other option, and that's what became a vice. So growing up, I was always playing video games, man, all to the late of the night and all that. So
Yeah,
um, going into marriage, taking this vice with me, and this addiction that I had, this is what started causing the problems for me, which is an interesting thing. So fast forward, my wife and I, we got married pretty young. She was just shy. I think she was like about 19 or so. I was like
okay.
22, 23, something like that.
And how did you
So
guys meet?
through church as well.
Okay,
She's actually my pops. That's his stepsister,
okay,
which is interesting. So yeah, so his dad got remarried at a later age, and
okay,
that's how she came into the picture. So they're not blood related. They're just,
right.
it's a step thing. So I don't want to make it think like it's like some kind of Jerry Springer thing, right? But yeah, so they're not blood related, but it's a stepsister.
Right.
But yeah, so that's how I met her through church and all that. And yeah, man, we just had a connection, and going into 18, 19, like we're trying to do the Christian things. We didn't mess up or do anything like that. So we were like, hey, now we're at an age we can get married, and that's why we got married in the living room and all this and that, right? Because we didn't do the whole big wedding thing. I didn't have like a lot of money or a huge
Yeah,
amount of income or anything like that. So we got married on love. That's that was the big thing, right? And so we got married young, man, and we didn't know what we were doing. We looked at everything in terms of the marriages that we had as examples around us, and we thought it was going to be easy, you know.
mm,
And the first year was amazing. It was cool. Like it was everything that we had expected. But going into our second year, we I'm playing a late night session of Call of Duty. All right. This is about 2:30 in the morning. And I'm getting ready to go to sleep. I turn off the PlayStation, go over to her side of the bed, and give her a kiss goodnight, let her know I'm getting into the bed. And then I see her phone on the nightstand next to her, and it starts vibrating, right? She gets a text message. I'm like, who the heck is texting her at 2:30 in the morning, right? So I do what any curious husband would do, and I check the phone, and I'm like, holy crap. Open it up, unlock it, man, and it's a conversation, a text message thread between her and another guy.
mm,
And it's, every endearing word that her and I have ever said to each other, like it's being shared between her and some other dude. And
man.
man, bro, like I tell you guys, like I was pissed. Felt betrayed. I felt like every bad thing you can think of. So I shove her awake and start screaming and yelling at her, cussing her out. And I'm just, it's completely out of character for me because I had never done that. And, but that set me off. I wanted to freaking throw the phone at the wall, and, she's there in shock at me discovering it, and I'm over there shocked at the betrayal.
Right.
That I just. But what I didn't realize, man, in that moment, and before anybody judges the scene and says like, the red pill movement always has this thing where they're like, oh, once a cheater, always a cheater, and this and that, and if the woman does this, like they just have these generalizations that they make, and these blanket statements that they make, man, and it's not. Let me explain as to why that was the case, because this is where my issues come in, man.
Yeah.
So if we rewind back, right, going into the marriage, one of the things that we had is that we both had false expectations. And this is something that you want to take note of for any of you guys that either haven't gotten married or just got married that are listening to this. Please take note of this, because if I would have known this beforehand, it would have saved us a lot of turmoil, which is I went into the marriage thinking that I had beat the game, thinking that I had gotten the girl of my dreams and that it was over and that I could just put this marriage on cruise control and we could just live out the rest of our lives, because the vows, what do the vows say? Till death do us part, right? Through sickness and in health and all that, right? So I thought, cool, like she's mine forever. No big deal. Like nothing's going to take us apart, right? Nothing's going to tear us apart, I should say.
Right.
And she was going in with the expectation. I was like, man, this dude was so good when we were dating. Like he treated me like a queen, treated me well. And if I marry him, he's going to be the 2.0 version of that man. He's going to be even better than I was, right? So we went in with the false expectation. And what happened is I became the downgraded model. Man, I go in and I start letting myself go. I start not wanting to take her out, not doing the flower thing, not doing any of the stuff that we were doing when we were dating. And I become more of an overprotective dad than an actual husband. And she came from an overprotective home, Christian and all that. So her actual dad was a pastor. So it's like, they come from that world.
Right.
So she couldn't go out or anything, So when we were married, like she was working, she had more freedom, of course. And she wanted to go, and she got invited to like, hey, let's go to a party or let's go this and for her coworkers. And she would come and tell me like, hey, babe, let's go. Like she was including me. She wasn't trying to exclude me. She was like, hey, let's go. Like we got invited here. Why don't we go check it out? And I was like, no, it's not my scene. Let's not go. We're not going. You're not going. You know what I mean? So I became that guy, man. And over time, that got really, really old. And I remember one particular instance, and I think this was a big catalyst because more moments like this happened more frequently. And it was, I was coming home from a late night at the Apple store. And if you guys have ever been to an Apple store, you guys kind of know how crazy it can get. And so I'm coming home. I just dealt with a bad customer, and she's mad about her phone or whatever. So I was having a bad day, man. It was like 10 p.m. at night. I get home.
Yeah.
And my wife is excited. She's excited to see me. She sees me walking. She's like, hey, babe, how are you? This and that. She starts talking to me and asking me about my day, telling me about hers. And I'm just, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to talk to her. I don't want to do anything. So I go.
Out.
Yeah, exactly. I go and I literally go and sit on my recliner, man, put my feet up, and I cut her off mid-sentence. And I'm like, hey, babe, can you just please be quiet for like, I just want some peace and quiet right now. I don't want to hear anybody talk to me. I just had a bad day, and I just don't want to hear anybody talk to me right now. And you could see her, man. She had like this face of heartbreak. She was like, why you're shutting me up? That was what her face was showing me. I wasn't reading it at the time, but that's what I was doing, man. I was tearing that apart, and she's the only person that I should have been excited to talk to. She's my wife. She's the only person that I should have been excited to talk to and hear her voice instead of this customer or whatever bad interaction I had. I was taking that work with me, and then what would I do to escape from that? Video games, right? That's what I would do. I needed to escape, and I would be playing with the same guys that I was just at work with for 10 hours, 9 hours, right? Same dudes, just for another 5 hours of my day, going into late at night and playing and doing that whole thing, living in a fantasy land, bro. While my wife is there next to me, wanting a relationship, wanting to be with me, and I'm not giving her the time of day. And then, we go back to the scene that I just described to you of the discovery, and that's what happens, man. That's what led to that, is that
Right.
the attention, everything that I thought I was giving her, I wasn't. And I could convince myself, or I had convinced myself, that I was a good man because I went to church every Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Or because I didn't cheat on her, because I wasn't out there looking for, chasing tail or anything like that. I wasn't like my dad, right? That was a big excuse for me. I was like, at least I'm not like my dad. At least I'm not drinking or doing all this stuff. At least I'm not addicted to drugs, as if being addicted to video games was any better or higher, on that. Man, it was this flawed thinking. And it took that for me to get the wake up call. But the hard thing is, man, that what happened after that was the real test, I think, is that we start doing counseling. With our pastor, we start trying to get the help that we need, and I become even more overprotective, and more of a dad, because now I'm tracking her phone. Now I'm trying to track where she's at. If she goes to a store for 20 minutes, to go get some groceries, I'm like, where the heck did she go? You could think of the psychology behind that, and how maddening that would be to somebody. I'm already an insecure guy at that point, right? I'm suffering all these insecurities, and now I have this proof or evidence that this was going on. And even though she decided to stick with me and cut that guy off, it still doesn't, I could say
the fear and insecurity is there.
Bro, yeah, exactly, man.
It doesn't just go away.
It doesn't just go away.
The itty bitty committee in your head.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And then, and you can chalk it up to oh, you're Christian and you're forgiving and this and that, but I wasn't really forgiving her, man. And that was the problem. And she could never get past it. She couldn't grow. I had to look at her phone. I had to log into her email, to her social media. I was crazy, bro. I was going crazy.
Yeah.
And
all of that murders attraction.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what you were describing pre-discovery, right?
Yeah.
All of your behaviors are all of the things that make a wife not attracted to her husband,
Yeah, man.
On every level. I'm not just talking physically, right? It's
emotionally, everything.
It's every aspect of marriage, right? So yeah, and then from what you're describing, I can only imagine that it pushed you guys further apart for a time, I assume. So then what was kind of the turning point? Where was it a change that you made internally? Was it a decision you made in terms of how you treated her? How did the healing process actually start?
Yeah. So essentially, man, I remember a day that I came home, and it wasn't out of the ordinary for me to get home while we were working things out, where I would park the car and stay 30 minutes after parking the car in my car. I would just stay there just weeping, bro. Just literally crying and trying to put on the face of I'm good. Let me go inside. Right. And so one particular day, I just couldn't handle the emotion of it. And I walked into the house and I kind of stormed in, tearing apart the closet. She was trying to talk to me. She's like, "Hey, are you okay? What's going on?" This and that. And I'm ignoring her. I'm like, "Shut up. I don't want to talk," And I'm looking for my pistol. I'm looking for my Beretta, because I'm like, this is it, man. I can't do this anymore. I don't want to keep, I'm going crazy in my head, So I was literally looking for my gun, man, because I wanted to load a mag in it, and I wanted to put it up against my temple, and I wanted to end it. That's literally what I wanted to do that night. Because I just couldn't handle the emotion of it anymore. And thankfully, because we were doing the counseling, our counselor told us hey, if y'all have a gun in the house, get it out of the house. While you guys are working this stuff out, get it out of the house. Just keep it out. Give it to a friend, trusted family member, whoever can hold it for you guys until you guys work things out. I didn't listen to that advice, but my wife did. She got it out of the house, and thankfully she did. Because I don't know what would have happened that night, man. It was really bad. And I remember coming to the living room. She knew what I was doing. I didn't want to tell her, but she knew what I was doing. and she knew what I was looking for. And, I literally dropped to my knees, bro. And I just started weeping like a little kid because I felt worthless, right? Like I felt worthless as a husband. I felt worthless as a man. I felt worthless as the leader of my home and as a Christian, right? Every role that I played or that you could play as a man, like I felt worthless in every sense, man. And I even felt worthless in the fact that I couldn't even take my own life. I was like, dang, like I can't even do this right. And she comes, man, she hugs me and she just embraces me. She doesn't say anything. She just embraces me and I feel lost, bro. And I remember the next day is when I called my pops and I told him, he knew what was going on and he was helping us in his own way. But he took me out to go get some food or something, and I don't remember where we went, but we were in a parking lot and I remember we just parked. And he had a conversation with me that, again, changed the course of my life, right? Changed my perception. And he goes, look, son, you're never going to be able to control what another person does. You're never going to be able to control what your own wife does. It's just not going to happen, man. It's not in the cards for any of us. You can't control that. The only thing that you can control is you. And if you can get really good at controlling you and developing you and bettering yourself, then everybody around you has to respond to the changes that you make. They have to respond to it, including your wife, right? And now if you work on yourself and you get better, your wife will respond to that. Now, she could respond two ways. He said, she could either decide like, hey, you're not the guy, I'm out. Cool.
Yep.
Her decision. At least you changed. And then if you change, guess what? If God blesses you with another wife in the future, you're going to be a much different man that can handle that and that you're in a much better position. Or he said, your wife will respond positively to that and she'll actually come to the party. You'll win her back. You're not going to lose if you do this and you just focus on what you can control. And so when he said that to me, and maybe somebody's listening to this and they think, man, that's pretty simple, right? It's like obvious, and it is, but to me, it wasn't at the time. Control yourself, work on controlling yourself, personal development. We talk about this a lot in Apogee, and but it all came back to that, man. And when he gave me that perspective, that's when that flipped that switch in my head, and that's exactly what I started doing. I said, all right, I'm not going to worry about the outcome of this. I'm going to worry about just being a better man. That's it. And literally, that's what I started doing. I started reading books on personal development, started, reading more scripture, applying it, not just reading it, but applying it in my life, changing my habits, didn't drop the video games completely, but I definitely reeled it back and I wasn't an issue anymore. You know what I mean? So, it wasn't an addiction anymore. I stopped. I stopped the pornography, all that stuff too, because that was also that came, from an early age as well. And like a lot of the vices, man, I dropped them, and then I started living what I would say, right? So if I told her I was going to do this, I would do it. And it took probably a few years for her to really respond to it. It took time, but she needed to see the undeniable evidence that I was actually changing. And
so
let's
pause.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I want to pause for 1 second because dads really need to hear this. Other than that, the motivating factors of everything that you were going through emotionally and with your marriage, what were some of the ways that you broke free of the addiction of pornography and the addiction of video games? Because I feel there's a lot of dads out there that are probably facing that same thing.
Yeah, man. Definitely environment control. That was a big one. It's just putting myself in an environment where, for the porn, that was it, right? Putting myself in an environment where I didn't have access to it. I didn't. That was a big thing because I got introduced to that when I was like 7, and it was by like my babysitter's kids, an innocent thing. Like my mom thinks everything's cool. My babysitter thinks everything's cool. Her older, 12, 13-year-old, 14-year-old boys, like they were like, hey, let me show you something, and the worst part is that it was in my own house and it was a VHS tape that my dad had in his closet. You know what I mean? So that was my introduction to it, and then that set it off for me to have access to it. And I always had it, and now, you know, given the internet and phones and all that stuff, even easier access. That wasn't as accessible to me then, but any access I had to it, I would take it. So I eliminated access. That was one thing. Changed the environment. I put myself in an environment where I was around people that weren't going down that path, that didn't do that or didn't engage in that. Because even, dude, growing up in the church, that didn't matter. You know, there was like youth leaders and youth pastors and people that I knew, you know, even my older cousin who took me to church was doing that. You know what I mean? And sometimes we were watching that together. It's like, and, you know, for anybody that struggles with that addiction, it feels sickening inside. Like, but it's hard to stop. It's a weird thing, man. And I think any addiction, I've never been addicted to drugs or heavy alcohol or anything like that, but I would imagine the addiction, the same dopamine hit that you get, that's what's happening, right, in your brain. So eliminating that, man, eliminating the environment that gave you access to it, that was a big thing for me. And then replacing those habits with good habits, right? Because your brain's still seeking the dopamine hit, so I wanted to replace it. So working out, doing other things, doing things with my wife, right? Granted, I'll say this too, is like when I stopped doing that and I was not seeking that stuff anymore, and then her and I were connecting on an emotional level, and we grew to love each other again and fall in love with each other again. Our intimacy became better, right? Our like, it was just better. So that in and of itself too, as a married couple, like that helps a whole lot get away from that, because you don't have a need there, right? You have it with your wife, and you have that intimate moment with your wife. So that was on the pornography side, man. The video game side was pretty much kind of the same thing. It was just I became so busy that I didn't have time for it. I didn't make time for it anymore. So even though it was still, I'd say it was still accessible to me if I wanted to play a game, it was there, right? But I didn't have this urge or this need to want to anymore, because I had so many other things that I was trying to work on that I just kept myself busy, right? So that's what helped with regards to that. So
that's really good.
yeah,
The idle hands thing is the toughest issue for a lot of people, being bored and
yes,
finding pleasure in their weaknesses and in the flesh, right?
yeah,
And like you're saying, there's a lot of people that are, I mean, just because you're a Christian or you're somebody, you're still going to have temptation. You're still going to have sin that you got to deal with, and you're going to have to root it out and kill it. That's just part of our sanctification process, in my opinion. So, but Justin, I know you had something. I wanted you to jump in there. Sorry.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there, but I got similar advice to what you were given. I came from my father and a good friend of mine who's a mentor, Tim Tanner. Unfortunately, he passed away of a heart attack a few years after he gave me the advice. He was an alcoholic who had completely reformed his life, found Christ, lived for his family, lived for himself, and like just watching him have the discipline to not want, and well, I mean, he always wanted alcohol, but just to watch him like say no on a daily basis was just something that kind of stood out to me. But one of the things that he said to me is, Justin, there's two things in life you can choose to do. You can choose to be controlled, or you can choose to control. Yeah. And he said, you can't control everything, and you need to understand you have to absolutely let go. But at the same time, you can control how you react and how you see things. Your perspective is huge. He said, a lot of people, when they act out of fear, or they act out of insecurities, or out of loneliness or wants, because I mean, that's one of the key causes for pornography use is loneliness. People feel trapped, or they feel lonely in a marriage or in a relationship. I've been there. I've been through a divorce. I've been through all the nasties of what you're talking about. And I can say, wholeheartedly, that's some of the best advice you could be given by someone like Pops. Yeah. Is just kind of a slap in the face reality, just saying, hey, like George actually gave me some of that as well. He was like, look, dude, you're complaining about these things happen to you, but you're letting them happen to you, and a lot of guys don't realize you put yourself in a vicious cycle when you allow fear to take over, you don't have discipline and you don't structure your day to get away from the things that are drowning you, because essentially that's what's happening. Each one of those controls, and this is how my dad put it, each one of those controls is a sandbag, and you're tying it around your neck, and you're in the water trying to tread water. And the more you put around your neck, the further you're going to go under. And he said, start cutting those free. And when he said, when I say cut those free, I mean let go. You can't control everything. Because I had really bad anxiety, when I was a teenager. I'm over it now, but I had to find mental fortitude, and I had to, like you said, over a long period of time, just kind of rebuild my mental state, my emotional intelligence, and just kind of learn. And Brandon helped me as well, obviously, because he's my twin brother. But the way my dad put it kind of struck home, those that weight around my neck. I wasn't realizing that I wasn't cutting those bags. I was letting them sit idle. They may have been floating for a little bit, but they'd get heavy again. So if I could give any advice based off of what you were given, I would, tell the dads or anybody struggling out there, cut those bags away. You don't need them. Like you feel like you need them, or you feel like they're part of you, but the quicker you let go, the better you are. So,
yeah, we had a mentor in Apogee that came on our mentor calls that we've had this year. He was a guy that specialized in helping men break away from porn addiction, and I'm forgetting his name, so I apologize for that. But one of the things that he said is that when you're in that moment, right, of choosing to engage in the addiction or not, you have about a 3-second window to make a decision. And I was like, when he said that, I was like, dang, like that's right. Like it's that small in terms of the amount of time you have to make a decision to go with engaging in that behavior or not, right? And within that time window, the more times you can decide, that you're not going to engage in it. It's just kind of like reps, right? We talk about that all the time. Is like, how many reps can you put in doing the right thing, given those temptations? Because the temptations they're gonna come around, right? And if you can understand that, so you guys that are listening to this, think about that. It's a 3-second window, guys. So it's immediate. As soon as you are given that temptation, that is when you have the ability to decide to do it or not. And the more times you decide not to engage in that activity, the easier it's going to become for you to not even entertain it. And now I look back, man, I'm disgusted at myself for those moments. It is what it is, but I can speak about it now without it being like something that I'm ashamed of, right? Like I am ashamed of it, but I can speak to it now because it's going to help somebody else, because I'm not the only guy out here that suffered that, man. I'm not the only guy that's gone through this at all, or is going through this right now. And it's like, no, like, and that's what I think we need to, as men, like as fathers, we need to be more vocal about this stuff, because we put this in the closet, man. We put this and we hide this under a rug, and we try to give the facade and the perception that we're all like, oh yeah, we're all okay, especially in the Christian world, right? Like this is one of the biggest things that I have with like Christian men's groups sometimes, is that, and this is not for everyone, I'm not saying all churches do this, but a lot of the churches that I grew up in, there was a perception for the Christian man, or the Christian family man that would go to church, and he had to live a certain way and present a certain way, right? And you couldn't bring up taboo topics like that, because it was like, no, we can't talk about this. Like this is too taboo for church. Yeah. This is too, you know what I mean? And when you hide those dark demons, like you can't slay them. You just can't.
Well, they just grow in power.
They grow in power, man. And
they live in the darkness.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And we do need to bring them out to the light, man. And without casting final judgment on our fellow brothers, because that's not our call, right? That's God's call. But to help, man, to be there and support them, and to help them get past these addictions. Because, dude, you were talking about the bags, right? And letting that go. The depiction that I have of the struggles of a man is the whole Atlas Shrugged. You guys are familiar with this depiction of like the Atlas holding the earth and the right, and the weight of that. That's how I feel every man walks around. That's the illustration of the depiction that I feel, is how every single man on earth feels, right? They feel like they walk around with this big old thing on their shoulder. And then when you're a family man and you get married, throw in a wife and a couple kids in that world, right? And now you're holding that up. Not only are you holding that up, but now it's your job to hold that up and protect it from all these attacks that are coming from all different angles, right? Whether it's culture, whether it's society, whether it's school, the government, whatever, right? Vices like porn, addictions, and all that stuff. All attacks, man, coming for you to freaking shrug and drop that ball.
Mm.
That's how I picture it in my head. That's what's happening. And what if we do what Pops told me, what Justin, what your dad told you in terms of letting those bags go, letting these distractions go, and understanding that if you control yourself and you get better at developing yourself, you become strong enough to hold this world without you having to feel like you need to shrug. You become strong enough to do that. And then it's not that it becomes easy. It's never going to be easy, right? But you become strong enough to hold it. You become strong enough to protect it. You become strong enough to have other people, other men around you, good men around you that can help you when this starts getting a little too heavy, right? Good men that mean well. And dude, it makes the world of a difference. And, I've found that in Apogee. I've found that in the group of men that I've surrounded myself with and the environment I put myself in. And it makes it hard to be distracted because when every guy next to you, shoulder to shoulder, is freaking focused on becoming better, you're not going to be looking back. You're not going to be there distracted. You're just going to be right there, right alongside with them, man. So,
well, the beauty of this is as well, and a lot of guys don't think about this. Yeah. You're not alone, man. Like we talk about it all the time. If you have a tribe, I know that world, I don't have to shrug because I have George, I have Dustin, I have Brandon.
Yeah, you got a whole bunch of extra
I have a lot of people helping me and protecting that. And at the same time, you talked about the 3 seconds. Well, let's think about the positive of that. Yeah, the negative is you have 3 seconds to fail, and you probably will every now and again. But you also have 3 seconds to make the right decision and have discipline. And Robin, said it best. She said she had the biggest trouble when she was in a depressed state. Right after they had children, she couldn't get out of bed. She just did not want to do anything. And she finally just had this epiphany one day. She thought she was just going to act like a rocket ship, and she was going to count down from 5. And she counted down from 5, and she said every day for the next few months, I think it was 6 or 7 months is what she said, I pretended I was a rocket, and I counted down from 5. And she said there was like a neurological link to that. It actually makes you take action. And she'd count down from 5 and hop out of bed like she was a rocket taking off. And that stuck with me. That was something that always, so on the flip side of your 3-second rule, you can use that 3 seconds to take action, to be disciplined, and to find a positive, you know what I mean? So share that wisdom, have a tribe, like we say, because there's so many benefits of that. And I think that's the problem is us as men, we isolate, we want to carry that. We kind of self-deprecating. We want to put ourselves in that situation where it's like, oh, we have to hold this by ourselves. Don't help me. I don't need your help. It's like, no, dude, you're getting crushed. You need help. So reach out, man, we're here. You're here. There's plenty of fathers and men like us who want to be in each other's lives and help other people. So,
yeah, man, the lone wolf mentality, bro, it's a detriment. It's detrimental, right? I'm not in the inside joke, but I'm going to say it. It's detrimental to men as well, man, to family men, that they don't have the reliance on a tribe. And what ends up happening, and this is something that just sparked the thought right now. Man, am I losing it? I'm literally losing it. Okay. Lone wolf mentality. Dude, I literally lost the thought.
And it's gone.
I'm so sorry. It's so gone. 3 seconds, right? I had 3 seconds to think about it, and I literally lost the thought.
That's just called getting old.
That is called getting old. That is called getting old.
Well, I think you're trying to say, like, if you're the lone wolf, you can't, you need the whole pack to help defend you. Work together. Is that where you're going with it?
I was going somewhere along that. Man, but it was something just a little bit deeper. And I lost it, dude. I'm gonna remember just a little bit. So
when you do, we'll circle back.
I'll circle back to it when I do.
The thing though too that warrants some acknowledgement is that when you're quitting these vices and you're getting rid of them and you're shedding yourself of them, you often have to focus a target of something that you're wanting to achieve in transition, right? So you're quitting. Let's say you're quitting video game addiction. Well, you've got to have something else that you can focus on to replace it. Because if you don't, what's going to happen is you're going to say, okay, I'm out of it. And then you've got nothing. You're not targeting anything. And either you're going to get bored or you're going to get depressed. And then guess what you're going to fall right back into? You're going to go back to that comfort, right? So you have to have actionable targets to transfer your focus of your mind to that. And I think that's such an important thing, whether it's in relationships or in your overcoming certain things and practicing your disciplines. So I just wanted to kind of emphasize that because it's super important for men who are dealing with addiction to understand that you have to have a good target, a healthy target to get out of these addictions.
Yeah, and here's what I wanted to say, and this will relate, is that one of the things that happens is, right, as family men, as men that get married, or even when we have kids, is that we think just by the simple act of getting married or having kids that miraculously these vices or these things are going to go away, right? Like when I get married, I won't have that addiction to porn anymore, right? You'll hear people, guys will think this way, that like, oh, I won't have any need for it because I have a wife, right? Or they'll think like, I won't have that vice anymore once I have kids because now I have a kid, like now I got to be more responsible. I can't be out at night, going out with the boys, drinking or whatever it is. And it doesn't go down like that, man. It doesn't. Like, you would think that, and I've had kind of discussions about this, you would think that just because of having a family, that is a reason enough for you to stop, right? You would think that sounds great on the surface, but it's not true for all of us, man. This is something that Tim Kennedy was talking about at the event, at the gala, which was talking about purpose, right? And a lot of the times what happens, and this is what's happening to me, right? I placed my wife on a pedestal.
Yep.
I thought that she was my trophy wife and she was my purpose for living. She was the purpose. She was my guiding star, all that stuff, right? Like she was the thing that made me. So when things didn't work out with her, what did I feel? My entire world was crashing. I wanted to end it, right? You cannot put another person as your purpose. Like even your kids, even your wife, they are a part of your purpose. They are a part of your world. They're ready to ride with you. And it's your job to protect them, guide them, and all that stuff, right? Provide for them. Absolutely. But when you make other people your purpose and you put them on a pedestal, it's not fair to them because they are just as flawed. They're just as human as you are. And you can't do that to them, and then you're also doing a detriment to yourself. I'm going to use the word again. You're also doing that again to yourself, right? Because it's not going to give you the purpose that you're looking for. You can't have another person be your purpose. God can be a purpose, right? But God gives you a mission. God gives you a purpose for living. It's not him that's the purpose. It's the life that you live that makes him, appreciate all the acts that you do, everything that you do, right? The faith that you have in him, like all those things, that's what gives you purpose. So you got to have a purpose that's deeper, man. And it's, when you put it on a person, even when it's your kids and all that, it's not gonna work. It's not gonna last. And don't expect that just because those life changes happen, you become a father and all that it's just miraculously going to change. It's not. It's not. Even more so, you're going to feel even more pressure if you're thinking that way. But if you're already looking for a purpose and you're defining what that is, and that's such a hard question for people to answer, right? Is what do you want? What do you want out of life? You guys ever try to ask that to fellow men or something like that? Like you get the deer in the headlights look like, I don't know, man. Like I don't know what I want, right? Like, but people that can kind of answer that question and give you at least a direction or something, right? Like, hey man, I don't know what I ultimately want, but I want this right now. Like, this is what I want. I want to have a good marriage. I want to have a strong, solid relationship with my kids. I want to be a better father.
Targets.
Yep.
That's
right.
Absolutely.
Sorry, go ahead, George.
The putting your wife on a pedestal, the reason that's also so problematic for marriage is she naturally wants to follow her husband, right? The husband is supposed to be the one guiding the family. So when you invert that relationship, guess what? She doesn't have a husband now.
Yeah.
she has another kid to take care of
Yeah.
or another teenager to take care of, right? And so that's why a good friend of ours, he leads a men's group that helps kind of really break down that dynamic, because most men are taught very poorly these truths, right?
Yeah.
But he says, become the man your wife wants to have sex with, not the one she has to have sex with.
Yeah.
And when you do that codependent kind of controlling behavior and everything, you're the guy she has to have sex with. And that's an ouch for a lot of people. But when you really like you're saying, you kind of looked at yourself and like, ooh, man, I am not being the man I need to be, regardless of what my wife does.
Yeah.
This is just who I should be, period. End of story. And when you started doing those things, and cutting out pornography, you said your intimacy and your whole relationship started changing. And final point on like pornography, I think a lot of people think, oh, it's harmless, right? It doesn't really do anything, or, whatever. Flip the script. If you knew your wife was looking at that kind of stuff all the time and fantasizing about other dudes, how would you feel? Like, I think guys have this thought, it's a lie, that it doesn't damage the closeness that you can have with your wife. And the truth is that she knows. She's not dumb. She knows what you're doing.
Yeah.
Oh, he was in there a little too long or whatever, right? Like, they know what's going on. And that has to hurt. And that creates distance, right? Because there's scar tissue now. So you listen to this and you think, oh, it's fine, I don't need to fix that or whatever. It's not hurting anyone. It's hurting you, man.
Yep.
It's hurting your sex life.
Yep.
Among many other things. But,
there's
that.
The solution too, and a lot of people don't talk about this, but, if you don't have a tribe, you can find people who are great mentors. Like I said, Meg Robbins or Gary Vee. Actually, this is one of the words I want to use right now: gratitude. If you're grateful for the things you have and the people you have in your life, you won't make as many mistakes as you would if you weren't. So I think as men, we need to practice gratitude and really be intentional about our gratitudes, because if we're grateful for our wife and grateful for the relationship we have for them, we're going to be less likely to do things like porn. Or if we're grateful for our house and home and our children and having that lifestyle that we want with that, we're going to be less likely to make the same mistakes and let our addictions take over. So I think that's something as men we don't really do as well as appreciate gratitude. So
yeah, and one thing I'll add to that is look for other men to help. Like it's hard to do something wrong when you're in the state of wanting to help other people. You know what I mean? Because it forces you to be better. Like, it just, because then you don't want to be inconsistent. You don't want to be a hypocrite. So what do? You level up in helping other people. So if you seek out fellow men that are in your immediate circle that need help, that need advice, that need counseling, and need a brother to lean on, be that brother. You may not have it all together. That's not what I'm saying here. You don't have to have it all together to help somebody. Help. And in doing so, it'll help you.
The pressure of okay, I have to model I have to practice what I'm preaching to these people.
Yes, sir.
And now it's public, right? I've shared it with someone else. I can't just keep it hidden inside me.
Yeah.
There's this pressure that builds on you, and it's positive pressure. It's this momentum forward that pushes you to rise to what you're saying, and you think about it from a team perspective or military or whatever. When you're the guy in charge or you're the captain of the team or whatever, all eyes are on you. You have to be the step above, right? So if you can kind of create that for yourself, like you're describing, that's a very, very good tool to kind of hold yourself accountable, right? You create the accountability through wanting to mentor others. But so G, love all this advice you've been giving us, sharing with your story and diving into those. So I appreciate your vulnerability about them.
Yes, sir.
Can we move on a little bit? So obviously you and your wife were able to reconcile and restore your marriage. Can you describe for us a little bit, how that transformation looks now and your family today? And, I guess maybe summarize a few of the real key critical lessons learned through that journey.
Yeah, man. Looking back now, man, I think that if we wouldn't have gone through that hard trial, we wouldn't be as in love with each other as we are now, because that forced us to grow up really, really fast, and make some really tough decisions at kind of an early age. And, thankfully we didn't have any kids at the time when we were going through that. So it was just us, which I'm grateful for, because I think if we would have had kids, it would have just made it a whole lot more, a whole lot worse, I think, and even harder. But it grew us closer than I could have ever imagined, man. I love this woman to freaking eternity and back, bro. Like, she is the love of my life. And likewise, she'll say the same. And we have these 3 beautiful, incredible kids that keep us up and force us to be better in every way. And we're learning as we go. But yeah, man, we grew so much from that experience. And as we look back, it's nothing but gratitude for it. We can look back now at it, and it doesn't hurt. It just, we can acknowledge that it occurred, and we can look at that as something that we needed to go through in order for us to get and have the blessings that we do now. And now, I mean, we have excellent communication between both of us. Like, we don't really fight. I'll tell you that much right now. Like, we don't really fight. I mean, we'll have disagreements and this and that here and there, like every couple has that, right? But we know how to navigate those conflicts. We know how to read each other. When we have hard times with the kids, sometimes if I'm in a mood, or if I get a workout in or something like that, and I'm kind of mad, or I'll, I'm in a bad emotional state, she tags me out. And she tags herself in, and she'll take over, and she'll do that, and vice versa. If she's had it, all day with the kids, and she's kind of having a rough one, like, I can read that and be like, all right, cool. I'm going to come in here. Hey, take a break. Let me take over, and we just have that dynamic that she makes it easy. Like right now, I'm doing the podcast, and she took the kids, and she's like, all right, how long have you been there? Okay, cool. From this time to this time, cool. Let me take the kids. Right. I'm going to take them to the room. We're going to, chill out there. That way we give you guys some space, and you can rock the podcast. And, and I don't ask her to do these things, bro. She right. From her heart, from the kindness of her heart. And, it's a huge blessing, man. So it was a big discussion that we had when we were going to bring this story to light, if you will. Right. And I'm very intentional about how I share the story, because I never want to put her in a bad light. That's not what this is about. Like, it's not like a wife bash session or something. Like, that's not what it is, man. Like, everything that happened was on me 100%, despite the mistake and despite the decisions and all that. But I forced those things on her because of the way that I was not showing up.
Yep.
So,
same with my story, and it. So,
man. So
every time I hear stories, dad after dad with their marriages, they think that marriage is the finish line when it's really the starting line, right? And
yes,
and I think that the only way you find harmony, like you're describing, where you just know each other, you just work together naturally, and everything flows, is you've set a foundation and you've eliminated solipsism, right? That selfishness, that self-centeredness. You're having to die to yourself and realize that you are no longer just your own flesh. You're your flesh and your wife's.
Yeah.
And when you work together as a team, and it's you and her against the world, not you versus her and everybody else, then it's so much easier. And just like a great example, solipsism, pornography is a heavy part of that, right? Yeah. So when you're in those kind of things, you're killing the motivation to give effort to your wife, because you're pleasuring yourself.
That's right.
Yeah. And so you have to kill the selfishness. You have to kill that self-centeredness. And kids will do that, and being in enough fights with your wife will do that too. Hitting that low, because I believe every marriage, no matter how good your relationship is, you're going to have some kind of fight, and you're going to have to fight for your marriage at some point in time.
Oh yeah.
And so you have to be prepared for that. And the best way to be prepared is, what did I do wrong? And how can I fix it? And how can I grow to prevent these things from happening again? Right.
Yeah.
And so, I love that you're vulnerable, and you've kind of shown us that. And I appreciate that. So thank you.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. And G, one last real quick question, because you brought it up earlier, the whole red pill movement. And, and in many ways, I think it's the backlash to the other side of that movement, right? Feminism and everything else, right? Sexual empowerment and all that kind of stuff. So, you and I have contrasting stories, right? There's similar situations, but I was the offender, right? In my story, you're the receiver. So, but either way, this whole concept of like, oh, once that way, always that way, and what would be your kind of arguments to dispel? I think that's a lie. I think the red pill movement it's trying to teach masculinity, but it's a very one-dimensional, brutish version of what a man should be.
Yeah.
So what is your kind of word of caution to younger men who hopefully listen to this and to try and not buy into that? Because I think that movement is going to create just as much damage as what we think caused where we are today.
Yeah.
And if we just trade one for another, we're just going to keep doing damage. So
yeah,
I'd be curious for you to dive in a little bit more on, what does true marriage look like? What does true reconciliation look like? And why is that argument from the red pill side wrong?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question, man. So one thing that they're operating on, the whole red pill, and I'm gonna straight up say this, is I was kind of following down that line. I was watching like Andrew Tate videos and all that, especially being in the men's space. So I was watching some of that stuff, and I was like, man, that kind of makes sense. And this is kind of the caveat, is that they're operating on these partial truths that when you see them and you hear them on a surface level, they're people say that the easiest way to get somebody on your side is for you guys to have a common enemy, right? And what's happening with the red pill movement is that they're making like feminism and even almost women, right, like the modern woman, the enemy. And all these guys are rallying against that, and they're like, oh yeah, like like the cheating wife or the cheating woman,
Right.
like whatever, right? Whatever generalization they're making. And it all sounds good, and it's like a rah thing, and it sounds like this big powerful movement empowering men and all that, because we've been raided and all this stuff. I get it, man. Like, I understand the sentiment. I understand why. It's like the extreme version of, like, the opposite, right, of the spectrum. You got extreme feminism, and then you got the extreme, and this is kind of a masculinist, if that's even a word, right?
Yeah.
That's what it is. And I think what's happening is they're glorifying the wrong things, though. The whole being a masculine man, okay, get yoked, get the 6-pack abs, cool. Get fit, get health. I'm agree with that. I get it. Money, okay, have yourself well. Do I need you flaunting the Lamborghinis, though? Do I need you, flaunting how many women you can be with? Like, is that really the goal here? Is that, and the guy that made me really open my mind and change my mind on the whole red pill thing and being in agreement with this is one of our guys in Apogee. His name's Ryan King. He has he'd be a good guy to come on the show. He has an IG page, right, Instagram page called The Wisdom of Kings. And he did it like a blog article type of thing, talking about the red pill movement and all that. And one of the points that he made is, he's like, what is the more difficult thing for a man to do? Is the more difficult thing for a man to do to go out and get as much money as possible and sleep with as many women as possible? Is that the harder thing to do? Or is the more manly, harder thing to do to be loyal to one woman for the rest of your life and be a good man and stay away from vices and be a godly man? Like, what's harder, right, between these two options?
Yeah.
And when he posed that question, I was like, oh yeah, the family, man. Every freaking day. That's harder. Way harder.
It's also the motivation too, right?
Exactly.
The motivation of the guy going to get all the money and the girls, it's still self.
It's still
right?
self.
It's all living for me, number one.
Yeah.
In the other scenario,
selfless. Yeah.
You have to live for more than yourself. You have responsibilities greater than you.
Yep. Yeah, man. And
so
it's also them not dealing with baggage.
The pureness of purpose makes a difference.
Well, if you don't deal with your baggage and you're like, well, screw the world, and if I can't find any good women out there, I'm just going to do what I can to, just do what makes me happy and nobody else matters. You're not dealing with anything. You're internalizing your problem. So honestly, you're going to be miserable in the end. Eventually, those relationships and all those women are going to start to feel empty. You're going to start to feel empty, and you're going to wonder why. You're not going to understand why you're depressed and losing your mind, So what they don't understand is the reward comes from the harder path. The family man is more rewarding in the long run. You get to sit there with your kids and grandkids one day, hopefully, if you're healthy, and, that kind of thing. So that's just my thought process on it. But
no, I agree, man.
Yeah, I mean, like, I wanted to change kind of gears here and go to something a little happier. So one of the questions we always ask dads is, what is like a core memory or story that you have with your kids that really just kind of resonates with you?
That's a good question. Man, one of the memories I have with my son, Ethan, my oldest, I have a close bond with him because he's into martial arts, right? So he likes doing Muay Thai, he likes doing jujitsu and that stuff. And I, that's my thing. I love. I haven't been like a practitioner my whole life, but I love dabbling in that stuff, and I'm doing Muay Thai and all that stuff with him. It's fun, man. And so he's grown up with this hero and villain persona, right? And he loves superheroes. Like that's his thing. And that's how I grew up on superheroes, Marvel, all that stuff, right? So I've kind of indoctrinated him a little bit with regards to that. But when correcting him, right, and trying to discipline him and helping him make good decisions, one of the things that I came to find is that, especially right now dealing with like tantrums, and sometimes he'll get emotional and scream and yell and all that stuff, and I let him kind of process the emotion. But asking him the question of like, hey, is this hero behavior or is this villain behavior? And having that click in his mind, that's been a huge moment for me, because a lot of the times we think that kids don't perceive things, they don't rationalize, or they don't reason with things like we do, because we're older or more mature, whatever it is. But he's surprised me because in those moments when I can get him to snap out of those emotional states, I ask him that question and he can kind of make a decision, right? He can say, no, that's villain behavior. And I ask him, oh, what do you want to be? Do you want to be a hero? Do you want to be a villain? And he says, no, I want to be a hero. Okay, so what should we do? Should do what hero things do. What heroes do. Do heroes do hard things or do they do easy things, right? Like using that as a perception, and that's helped him, man, kind of rationalize and having that connection with him where I can turn to him and ask him that question in those difficult times. Like I can tell you, happy moments, we've had a bunch of them. We love cracking up, we love laughing and all that. But I want to give you that because when you get to a point where you can not only relate to your kids, but also teach them a lesson in a way that where my dad or my grandpa would have just taken out a belt and just whooped me, that was the quick go-to correctional thing. But if you can rationalize with them, if you can get them out of their emotional state, like I think you build a really strong bond with your kids when you do that, man. And if you do that a lot, you get better at it. You learn how to read them. And I think that's a good lesson. And then those have been key moments for me where I'm like, all right, I might be doing this okay. I might be doing this okay. I'm not there yet, but I might be doing this okay. And that's a good thing to have as a father, bro.
You're definitely leading.
Yeah.
Yeah. And until they look at you and laugh maniacally, and then you're like, "Oh, this is the villain."
Yeah, until he turns into the Joker. Yeah, exactly.
He just wants to watch the world burn. You're like, "Oh man, like what do I do now?"
Yeah, what do you do now? I don't know about that one. Well, we got to talk to Jordan Peterson on that one, man. That's a different type of
we got Brandon Blinson.
Psychology.
There you go. Brandon Blinson right here. He's just as good.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
No. So I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
What are 3 ways on a daily basis that you? What are 3 ways that you lead your family on a daily basis?
Sure, man. So one way for sure is leading on the physical health side. I make it a point to be physically active, especially this year, man. Like Apogee has really leveled that up. So that's been great. It's been awesome to see my kids go into the gym room with me, and they want to work out. And it makes the workout longer for sure, when they're in there, because you're worried like, oh, don't touch that. Wait. They're picking up the weight. They're like, no, dude, wait. But it's fun because I see that I'm setting an example in that regards to that, and even with my wife, just her having a kid just recently, having our baby, she's only 4 months postpartum, and she's seeing the change and seeing that. So now she wants to jump in there as well, and I haven't made it an issue. I haven't forced her. I haven't said, hey, like you should start. None of that. It's just been me being consistent every single day, doing some sort of physical activity. And that's been huge. So that's been definitely one leadership thing that I'm very very grateful for, man. We're grateful for. The other thing is, I try. I don't want to say try. I do my best to spend intentional time with them every single day. So in Apogee, we have this thing, the E11 or the E10 is what it's called, and one of the habits in there is to write a note or something to your family. Write a gratitude note or something telling them you love them, some encouraging note, to each member of your family. I play my own game, so what I do instead of do the note thing, I do intentional 10 minutes, a minimum of 10 minutes. So just no tech, no nothing. Hey, just you and me and the kids, or me and my wife, and we're just engaging in conversation, or I'm engaging in the kids. And usually with the kids, I mean, they're 5, so we're just playing, bro. Like, we're playing with the action figures. We're playing whatever, running around. I had this cool moment. I'm going to share this. I had this cool moment this weekend. I had just done a hard workout. It was like 70-minute workout. I was sweating. Come out, my kids are running around. And then I just started playing with them. We were like playing with like a soccer ball inside the house. Probably not the most coolest thing you should be doing, but so I was running around with them after the workout, and they got winded. They were like, "Oh, we need some water," and they were all winded. And I'm all like, "You guys are done? Like, what's up?" So that was a cool moment, bro, to experience that, because just like a year and a half ago, like I would be the guy that was getting winded and all that, So it's cool to see that. To have that moment, but intentional time, 10 minutes minimum with each member. I try to do that I do my best to do that every single day with them. And if I can't do it individually, I'll do it collectively, but just try to make it no tech, no distractions, just like, hey, we're engaging in something, some sort of activity, or engaging in conversation, telling them stories. I love telling them stories.
Beating them in sports and being like, "I'm loco, man."
Yeah, right. I'm a loco. Yeah.
The loco dad.
Yeah, the loco dad, bro. And then the other thing, man, is I do my best to read every day. So I think reading and learning a new skill, or bettering yourself in that, acquiring skills, huge. And I think as a leader, a family leader, that is one of the biggest things that you can do, because you're going to need all sorts of skills to do this job effectively, guys. Like, you think about, like, you need communication skills. Sometimes you need sales skills to sell your kids on some sort of new thing that they need to do. You need all sorts of different skills to be able to do this job effectively. And I'm in love with learning, man. And I don't particularly, I'm not fond of school, but I freaking love education. And I love learning. And I think reading every day and making it a priority to read every day, even if it's just for 10 minutes or more, is a huge benefit and a huge thing that can help you advance as a family leader, for sure. And if your kids see you doing it, if your wife sees you doing it, you're just setting a good example for them. And don't give me that crap of like, I'm not a reader, or I don't like to read. Like, yeah, you do. You read social media posts all the time. Yeah, you read long, boring emails at work all the time. Like, you read, you just haven't found maybe material that you actually like, or that you actually think is going to help you. But try reading some of the books that we read, right? And it's going to help you. So, for sure. But those are 3 things, man. I don't know if that was
great.
That's cool,
yes, perfect. And you segued into my next question, which is perfect. You're talking about learning and handing down knowledge, right? So what does the ideal legacy, G, for your kids look like to you? Like, what would be the ideal legacy you want to leave them?
Yeah, man. For me, it's, so I have a journal, right, that I write in. I try to write it in every day. But what I do for this journal is I have chapters separated in there, and one of the chapters that I have is for my kids. It's literally like where I write lessons, where I write stories, where I write maybe flaws that I have, things that I want to leave behind. Because when this came about when my grandfather passed away multiple years back. I got the call that I wasn't super close with him. I was close to him as a kid, but I wasn't close to him as an adult. And it was my dad's dad, and I get the phone call from my mom telling me that he passed away. And at first it didn't hit me. I got the news, and I was just kind of sat with it for a little bit. And then I started kind of crying and feeling it, and I started thinking to myself, man, I'm like, this man who knew my dad really well before my dad had his accident, and he had all these lessons, all these stories, all this wisdom that just ended with him. Like, it's gone. And I don't get to have, like, there's no YouTube channel he started, that I can go watch. There's no Instagram page that I can go see and read some of his content, right? There's no book that's written about him or anything like that. I'm like, I would love that. I would love to be able to get into his mind and see, well, maybe he wasn't the greatest man or whatever, but he had lessons, man. He had life lessons and experience that I could have adopted from and learned from to some extent. So I took that idea, man, and I dropped it into my journal, and I said, all right, like, I want to start writing lessons for my kids. And even though they're not old enough to receive them yet, I don't know when my time is up on this earth, man. So my legacy for them is all the lessons, everything that I've learned up to this point. That's what I want to leave them, because if they learn all the things that I've learned at a much earlier age, they're going to have a whole lot of leg up on life, man. They're going to have a whole lot of leg up on,
That's right,
on marriage, on the family game, on, the business side, like all these things, on faith, right? Like everything they'll be able to learn, man, in much faster and at a much faster rate than I did, and not have to suffer all the things that I had to suffer, and that's my legacy. That's what I want to leave behind. And it's not money. It's not fancy stuff or material. Well, like it's the lessons that their father lived.
Yeah.
That's what I want to leave them behind.
Beautiful,
man.
Thanks, man.
G, thank you so much, man, for sharing your story, for being honest and open with us, and for just all the advice and wisdom. So where can people find you? What's the best way to get engaged with Alpha Dad Consulting and support what you're doing?
Thanks, man. Yeah, man, you just go to alphadadconsulting.com. That's the main website. That'll lead you over to the podcast. If you look it up on any of the podcast platforms, Alpha Dad Consulting. YouTube channel is the same thing, Alpha Dad Consulting. And then my Instagram page is G Vidal. So my initial G Vidal _ADC for Alpha Dad Consulting. You'll be able to find me there. If you DM me there, I'm more than happy to have a conversation with you, man. I'm always looking for good men to plug into a tribe with. So, yeah, man. Yeah. Good men are good to.
And tell us a little bit more. I know you kind of shared with me. Maybe it's a little too early to tell it all to the world, but I know you've got some big plans with kind of building a community and a not necessarily just a paid thing, but like a group that people can come and share this, with other men wanting to improve.
Yeah. So essentially, I'm building out a coaching program right now that I'm going to be doing like one-on-one coaching for like a 12-week program. So I got that coming up early this next year. Hopefully in January is when I'll have all that ready to go. And then I'm building out a community product that will be a paid community. Alpha Dad Tribe is what I'm calling it. Coincidentally, we've been using the word tribe this whole time, but that's exactly what it is, man. And it's just want to build a tribe of family leaders, man. Like that's really what it is.
Yeah.
And I think we as family leaders, like we need to lean on each other, and we need to build a brotherhood where we can pour into each other and challenge each other, keep each other accountable, just like we've been doing in Apogee. And I've learned a lot through there. I'm working with Matt to try to figure out an Apogee affiliation as well. So that I have that as a component as well. I want to work with Matt on that side, and I'm going to try to be involved in Apogee as much as I can as well. So, cause all the guys there, man, like they're my brothers. So it's just like George. And now I'm adding Justin and Brandon in there somehow, some way. And Dustin, who I didn't get the chance to meet today, but hopefully I get to meet him again soon.
We'll get them through the Apogee men's program.
There you go.
Soon enough.
There you go. Yeah. No, but that's but that's it, man.
G, man, it has been a real privilege, and I have, like I said, I'm your Apogee brother, so I get to learn from you all the time. These guys just get a little taste, so now they'll have to sign up for the program. But bro, I love so much your story and your willingness to share, and I think a lot of people can relate to what you've been through and how you and your wife have fought for your marriage. And it's the example we need, because too often I think people throw the towel in too soon. So thanks for being a great example. I'm excited to continue to get to know you more as Apogee brothers and supporting each other with what we're doing to help men. And we just wish you all the best. And any way that we can help you, just let us know anytime, brother.
Thank you, brother. Truly honored to be on the show, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
Well, enough talk, dads. Let's get climbing that mountain of fatherhood. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Present Fathers Podcast. Make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Spotify to catch all of our amazing episodes. We will see you in the next one.